Money in the bank.
Hey guys, welcome to another week of Money in the Bank. This week I have Brett with me.
Hey guys.
So Brett, I have to say this week has kind of felt like the longest week. So like, you know when you're on the highway and there's a semi passing another semi?
All the time.
Oh, that's what this week's felt like to me.
That's a special kind of hell, I think. Yeah.
Well, and I would say, kind of to tie into this week's episode, sometimes that's how investing can feel. You're just on autopilot, right? You're on cruise control, and all of a sudden you have to put the brakes on because semi's passing another semi, or stock market's going down a little bit. But the best thing you can do in that situation is to stay in the left lane and just make it past the semis, right?
That's right.
So kind of a goofy example, but that's the truth with investing. I feel like, I've kind of gotten to the point where now it's all on autopilot, it's all automatic, but I just have to keep doing what I'm doing. Keep it, on autopilot, keep it on cruise control. Just let it go. And that's the best strategy I can do, but that can be hard, It can be hard to be like, oh no, I want my money to be, safer, or I want access to my money now, or look, I have this pile of money, why am I not doing something more exciting with it? I think those are feelings sometimes that, start nagging at me as like, oh man, I could buy a lake house, and so like, you have to kind of learn that the best thing you can do is just leave it alone.
Right. What is that opportunity cost for you? Is it better to let it ride where it is now? Or, is it better to look at different opportunities? I think we could talk about property investment as being a vehicle. I think we could talk about the stock market. And if you're going to compare those different things, depending on what they're doing and what the market's doing, is it worth it to, take a look at some of those other opportunities? Is it really, a crazy opportunity that you can jump into? Or is it the right thing to do to just let it slide and, keep it where it is and sit behind that semi and just wait for it to pass and then boom, strike while the iron's hot?
Yeah. Well, and I think, so, this week I really kind of wanted to talk about beginning as an investor. Because especially when you're young, it's like, oh, I don't want to wait, all this time. I just want to make money now. So I'm going to pick a stock. And I started investing when I was 19 is when I got my first mutual fund.
Well,
and
usually most 19-year-olds are worried about more where they can spend their money rather than where they can invest it.
Yeah, well, I was a special kind of 19-year-old, I guess. But, I remember I was 19 and I wanted to earn a good interest rate. What really got me excited about this is I had a bank that on my savings account, I was getting 3% interest.
Ooh.
On a savings account, right? I mean, usually that's like 0.000025 if you're lucky. And so I started looking at it and I was like, and this was when I was 16, I had this bank account. And I was like, so if I had, $1,000 in this account, then I would just get $30. And I started bumping the zeros out. And I was like, so someday, if I had $100,000, then I would get
$300?
$3,000.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that started getting me really excited about this because I was like, at some point, if you can just keep piling money in this pile, then you could live off of the interest. And, most 16-year-olds, they're not thinking like that. I'm just a special kind of human. But it got me really excited because I was like, all I need to do is grow this stash of money and then I can live off of the interest forever, right?
Right.
And then I started learning more about interest rates and I was like, so I'm getting 3%, which was great for a savings account, but the stock market on average gets 7%. And I was like, oh my goodness, so if I could get 7%, then instead of, $3,000 on $100,000, I'd have $7,000. And all of a sudden, that, that's game changer. So...
Well, you're a youngster, too. I mean, when I had enough money to open my first certificate of deposit, right, CD, I think when I was, maybe around 10 years old, something like that, I got $1,000 CD from, present for my grandma at some point. It was like a legacy thing that I could invest with. I got a certificate of deposit for 7.59%, and that was like great for the time. I didn't know it was good at the time because I was just like, my parents took me to the credit union that we had at the time, and they were just like, this is what you do. This is the best return on the investment that you can get here, and it was a good opportunity. So
yeah,
that 3%, you really needed to look for different opportunities, I guess.
Well, and I was doing it when I was 16, and I was really doing all of this independently. I mean, my dad helped me, get the bank, but this was just like what I did for fun in my room. Like most people who are working on their MySpace profile and getting like their top 8 just set, and I was like, I'm just going to leave Tom in my top 8, and I'm going to focus more on investing and learning about it at the age of 16.
Oh, such a millennial thing to say, my God. Right.
But, I think in the long run, this has been really good for me because it got the juices flowing early. And so, even when I was 16, I was really good at saving money, and I learned to be really good at saying no when I couldn't afford things. So there were a lot of opportunities, that I was like, oh, this is once in a lifetime. My friends are going on this amazing spring break, and I'm going to have to say no because I can't afford it. And I look back and I'm like, that wasn't once in a lifetime. I've gone on amazing trips since then that I've truly been able to afford that haven't set me back. Because, I've invested these dollars, and, now I'm 26, so some of these dollars have been invested for 7 years, and they're working harder than I can.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's that power of compound interest and, taking advantage of, high yield interests, that are out there. People are willing to give you money to borrow your money, right? So take advantage of it, right, and grow that pot.
Yeah. So yeah, I was talking about the story about how I kind of learned about interest and got excited. So I remember my goal was to save up $1,000 to put in a CD.
There you go.
So I was working my butt off the summer after freshman year of college, and I actually passed my goal. I ended up saving like $1,600 up, and I was like still really nervous because in college I would kind of like work and save up this money, and then I would live off of it all school year, and I didn't work a ton during the school year. So I was like, I'm just going to put it in a 6-month CD and see what happens. So, I had like a 4% or 4.5% or something CD. And then at the end of that 6 months, I was like, I don't need this money at all, and I opened my very first mutual fund. And that money that I put in, so when I was 19, 7 years ago, it has more than doubled now. This year alone, my mutual fund earned is at 17%. Now, I'm not saying that that's normal or that's what you can expect, but the point being that the sooner you get it in, even if, there's been market corrections, there's been some downs, but I mean, everybody kind of points back at, the 2006 to 2009 timeframe, right? But even at the lowest, from the highest to the lowest, if you would have just left your money in, it would have more than doubled again by now. So, it's kind of one of those things where I learned at a very young age, it was hard putting that money in and then watching it go down, but I just left it there, and now it's gone up, So.
Yeah, no, a lot of people have a problem with that. Like if they have money in something, especially if it's a new investment, right, into a mutual fund, they want to watch it all the time and see what's happening and how much money did I make today, and oh no, now I lost this much money, right? And that creates a reactive panic, more likely than a reactive, bliss period, I suppose. Because you're not going to do anything if your money's going up. You're just going to leave it in there. And, you're like, oh, yeah, this is great. This is a great opportunity for me. You might get scared if it's going down, and you might want to pull it out. But, again, that's just you getting stuck behind that semi, passing another semi. And it's going to come back. It's going to get better, right? Just let it go. He's going to pass him. It might take 20 minutes, right? But eventually, the road will be cleared in front of you, and it's just going to take off again. And, that number is just going to spike up again. And then so that'll make you happy, but don't get too afraid about it.
And I say, stick with your strategy. So if you're like, I'm putting this money away when I opened that mutual fund, I didn't even really know why I was investing it. I just wanted to grow this stash someday. I didn't know what it was for. I didn't know when I was going to need it. To be perfectly honest, I still don't know when I'm going to need that money because, we have these conversations and we call it our midterm money, or we say we're going to use it for this or that. I remember when I put it in and I said, oh, well, maybe I'll use it for a down payment for a house someday. And by the time we started buying our houses, we were like, well, we're not going to take money out of our investments for that. We'll just save more. But I do say have a strategy for that money. If you're like, this is for my retirement, or this is for, when I have a down payment on a house and I'm going to buy that in 5 years, don't just pull it out because you get scared. Stick to the plan.
Right. And maybe the plan updates itself a little bit and you're able to pull, you look at that situation when you get closer to it, and right in our situation, it was worth it to leave that money in there and just adjust and be like, okay, if we save in these areas for like 6 months, we're set, and we don't have to sacrifice that money that is still growing at a great rate, right? Leave it in there, let it keep growing, and then we'll use it for plan B, right?
Yeah. So another big thing I say too is to have goals for yourself. So, have a plan and then adjust the plan as needed, but also have like checkpoints along the way. So, for me, like the first thing was like saving my first $1,000. And that was like a huge thing at the time, to like have $1,000 extra dollars that I could invest, And when you're at that point, do not buy a stock. Do not put like all of your hard-earned, I only have $1,000 to invest in a stock. Put it in a mutual fund, get the diversification, make it a little bit safer. But like, kind of do reward yourself, but have more goals. So, after I got my first 1,000, that was so exciting. I was like, I can't wait until my investments hit $10,000. And I kept setting all of these little checkpoints for myself because that motivated me when the market dropped. Instead of getting scared and pulling all my money out or moving it to, safer funds, I would be like, can I free up any cash to put more in?
Right. Then you're right. Because in a downed period like that, it's an opportunity for you to be more aggressive and, help yourself out and work toward those goals a little bit harder because, you have to dig yourself out of the hole. So that's a smart mentality to get yourself into.
Yeah. So, I talked a lot about my first experience investing. What was yours like?
So I was kind of the opposite of yours. So I was very averse, in coming from my parents, right? They were very averse to like the stock market or anything that was more volatile. So we did a lot of, I had a lot of certificates of deposit over, the course of my, teenage years and things like that as I started making money. I started getting an IRA pretty early. When I was like 14 to 16, I think somewhere in that time frame, that I continued to contribute to every year for I think at least 5 or 6 years. But that was just in a regular account. It didn't go into a mutual fund or anything like that.
Oh,
it was. I would put the money into the IRA, fund, and then or the vehicle. And then put it in CDs inside of that IRA because that was safer.
See, and I find that fascinating because with my background of having a dad as a financial planner, I, always kind of knew about mutual funds. To be honest, I didn't even really realize that you could get an IRA that wasn't tied to a mutual fund.
Yeah, mine was just... I mean, right, we didn't... there was not a whole lot of internet investing going on during that time period. There wasn't, a lot of market knowledge that we had available at our fingertips. It's not like you could just do a Google search really at that time and like figure out what the best strategy was. Pull up 10,000 different blogs that tell you here's all these different ways to invest and whatever it is, right? We basically were just working through what options we had available at, in our case, a credit union that was in our area, and that my parents had banked at forever, right? Through their, through their company. That was what they invested in. That was where they got all their deals from. That's where all the, and they had an IRA. I think it was another company that came in that was offering that service that was through them to be able to invest that money in that situation. And they were like, yeah, you can, just play it safe and put it into a CD through the IRA, and then you can invest this much money, and there's tax sheltering involved, and so it's a better long-term vehicle for retirement and all kinds of, not necessarily spin doctoring at the time, but they were like, it's better than what you were doing now with like a regular CD because there's some tax advantages there and stuff like that. So it is a better vehicle. At the time, I was not, looking back in hindsight, I was, still only going 50 miles an hour on the highway instead of like 70 or 75.
So you were just kind of staying in the right lane.
I was just cruising along, getting passed by minivans here and there, right? And
by those darn Dodge Caravans. We don't even know how they're still driving.
Yeah, but they're everywhere. Every road trip, there's 100 of them. So, right, yeah. So, and I didn't end up starting to invest in mutual funds, I don't think, until I was at least in college, if not out of college by then, right? I was just playing it safe with a lot of my funds and just continuing to grow my funds through sweat equity, right, increasing my revenue streams rather than letting investments grow the monies that I had already funded.
Yeah. So I'm actually really glad, too, that you mentioned some of the tax advantages of the IRAs. And in case people don't know, there's not a lot that I will say our government has done well. And this is not a political podcast, so I won't go into depth. But I would say, retirement accounts are one thing that there are some really good things out there. They have set up some really good systems. So, 401ks or IRAs, they basically work the same way. So if you have a traditional 401k or IRA, it means that you pay tax on the money, or you do not pay tax on the money going in, but then you will pay tax coming out. However, you do not pay tax on any growth. So leaving it in there longer means that it has more time to grow without being taxed. And then sure, someday you're going to have to take the taxes out, but it's already grown way more, than it ever would have. So by the time you're taking the taxes out, it's like only touching a portion of your interest. And then Roth IRAs and 401ks, you pay the taxes up front and then you don't get taxed on them later. So, I always encourage people kind of do your own research, look at your tax bracket. For us as dual income, no kids right now, it makes a lot more sense to kind of stick with the traditional route than the Roth, because our taxes will likely be going down in the future because our, income will be lower or we'll have more write-offs, etc., etc. But, Roths can be really good for people who, think that the opposite is true. So
right, and, that was a confusing principle for me when I was originally setting this up, because that was right around the time that, like, Roth was becoming a thing or a more popular thing, or I guess it was even before I started working at my big company, where Roth was offered as one of the vehicles for the 401k, was what the difference was between a traditional and a Roth. And, it was kind of basically explained to me incorrectly as, if you think taxes are going to be higher when you are in your retirement age than it is today, then you should probably invest in a Roth, because you're paying the taxes now, so you don't have to pay the more expensive taxes later. Well, that's not true, right? It's not what the taxes are in general across the board. It's not what the United States taxes are, right, in the future. It's not like the government just raised taxes across the board, and that's what it is. It's your personal situation, right? So if I'm making $100,000 today, I'm in a higher tax bracket that if I'm only withdrawing $30,000 a year when I retire, therefore my tax bracket is lower in the future, so therefore it would be smarter for me to pay taxes in that situation.
Exactly. And so, but some people, if you're just starting out in your career and you're making less money, then the Roth might be the right answer, because, in the future you'll have saved more and you'll be withdrawing more and you'll bump up into another tax bracket. Another example is I did a lot of Roth when I was single and just starting out in my career. And then, we got married, and the government loves us dual income, no kids. Let me tell you that, right? Because we just pay, I think we pay actually like the highest taxes out of like any category. So, you know, once I kind of like evaluated our situation, I was like, it is going to be hard for us to get into a higher tax bracket. So if nothing else, we'll stay the same. Right. But 90% likelihood we will drop down at least one tax bracket. And so I encourage people to kind of take another look at that, because I think when Roth came out, it was marketed so hard to be, oh, well, do you think taxes are going to go up in the future? And of course, everyone says yes. And I think there's some confusion there. So, you know, as always, do your own research, make sure you're making the best decisions for you. But in my experience, you know, especially if you're in the same situation as us of dual income, no kids, I would encourage you to run the numbers again if you're, you know, still in Roth, and see if traditional makes sense for you.
Right. And it's not a guessing game of kind of where you're going to be in the future. You should have an idea of how much income you're going to be pulling out in your retirement. That's part of your retirement planning phase.
Yeah.
It's more of a question of what are you paying now?
Well,
right?
And
that
I
will
think
make that difference.
Gosh, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Is you should have a retirement plan. And I would say 95% of people don't. They don't think about it.
Don't have any idea.
Or they think they've just been saving money and it's gonna work out. So if you have never sat down and had a plan, gosh, that's such a good exercise to go through of how much do I spend on an annual basis? How much do I save on an annual basis? How will my expenses change in the future? What is my target, you know, annual expense? Do I have enough money to cover that? So, you know, if you're invested in stocks and bonds and, you know, a healthy investment portfolio, they say that the safe withdrawal rate is 4%. And so basically, you know, if you take your lump sum of money you have, times it by 0.04, and if that exceeds your annual spending, then you can retire, right? That's the basic math of retirement right there. But most people have no idea what these numbers look like. So, you know, part of the battle is know your numbers, know how much you spend a year. And, you know, I was actually reading an article today, and this guy saved, you know, $1 million by the time he was 50. And he's still working for a few more years before he retires. And, you know, they were like, how did you save this much money? And he said, well, I never inflated my lifestyle. So when I got raises, you know, if I got a 3% raise, I would increase my 401k contribution by 2. And then I would let myself feel that 1% raise. But over the years, I mean, that's not even keeping up with inflation. So he really didn't inflate his lifestyle much. And if you can learn to live that way and save more, you're going to be in really good shape in the future.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I mean, that was kind of the golden rule of saving is if you get that big bonus check or you get that big pay increase, do not blow it, right? You didn't need that stuff before. You don't need it now. So just put that money somewhere where it's going to grow for you. Circling back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? With that $1,000 that you invest in, you know, the whatever vehicle you want to invest in that makes sense for you at the time. Let that money grow for you, double over time, because that will turn into so much more. That bonus check that you get can turn into so much more of a bonus check if you let it sit in your investment vehicle for 10 years than it does buying that big screen TV or whatever, right?
And, you know, I would say just like, you know, we talked about not looking at your statements every day, right? Especially if you're impulsive and it's going to make you want to move your money. But maybe quarterly, look at them and get excited about the progress you're making. Because, you know, when I graduated from college and I already had, you know, some money invested in the stock market, but then I could start investing in a 401k, like, I just remember getting my first $10,000 invested. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, you know, that's so much money. And it just feels really good, and it feels like you're being productive. And then every milestone, it's like it's easier to get to than the last one was. You know, just your dollars start working for you, plus you're still contributing. And then maybe you can start contributing a little bit more with every raise you get. And before you know it, it's just on autopilot and you're just cruising in the left lane and the semi got over and you're free to go.
Right. And if you look at again, the highway analogy, if you look at the road trip overall, right, if you look at that big graph that shows you over time where you started, how much you invested, how much you put in per paycheck, that little bit at a time, and see over a year, even just a year, how much that stuff grows, or even 6 months, how much you've increased without even knowing. What it is. It's so valuable to do that. I think the downfall that we talked about at the beginning was if you're looking at that stock ticker, right, and you're just looking at that plus minus score for the stock market every day and saying, oh man, my investment just tanked this dollar amount today between yesterday and today. That's where people get antsy, right? They're not looking at the full trend bar, or even if they do look at that first dip that they have in the trend bar. Just hold on, look at that 6 month to a year period and say, man, I'm really doing good. And maybe the best advice you can give is if it's really tanking and that market's going down, if you invested in a medium period and it's tanking down after that, invest more when it's going down, right? That's when it's good to invest. So if it goes down, that's a good thing. You scrap as much money together as you can and just put it in there when it's low, because it's going to go up. That semi's going to get passed. You're not in retirement age yet, right? So it's going to bounce back.
Well, and so maybe we can kind of look at it as like being in a construction zone. Those little orange barrels cannot be on the road forever. Wisconsin, I'm looking at you. I really think you just leave them on the side of your highway forever. But someday they're going to have to go away and we're going to be free to drive all over the state again. And it's going to be great. But you're right. When the market starts going down, invest more. And, for me at a young age, it was so hard because I was like, I'm right out of college, I'm paying off student loans, I don't have that much to invest, but I would come up with like $100. I would be like, I'm going to just not go out to eat at all this month. And I would come up with $100 and I would put it in, and every penny counts. Every single penny counts. And it matters, and it does grow, and it sounds so silly and it sounds like it's not true, but if you are disciplined enough to be like, no, I'm going to, come up with $10 a week to invest. Before you know it, you're coming up with another $10 a week and you're doubling the amount that you're putting in there. And then it's going in there and it's doubling itself, And it's just like this awesome snowball. And you get to the point where you're just like, oh my goodness, this is great.
Right, because what did we say? Every 20 years your money doubles itself, or what is that?
No. 7 to 10.
7 to 10.
If you invest it.
So, which is even more of an opportunistic, situation to invest early, invest at an early age, whatever the vehicle is, get it in there somewhere, don't spend it, right? And if it's an IRA, great. If it's a mutual fund, even better, right? And put it in there at an early age, because that $100 is going to turn into $200, is going to turn into $400, right? And by the time you retire, it's going to be let's say, what is it? How many doubles is that between 7 years old and 65? Quite a lot, right? Quite a lot of doubles in there.
Quite a lot of doublers.
Get my napkin out and I'll write on the back of it.
Well, and I saw this grid the other day talking about depending what age you are, with this 7% interest rate, how much you need to invest to become a millionaire by age 65. And it is a hell of a lot less when you are 20 years old than even when you're 30. Like you, Brett, you just turned 30. It's over for you. Just give up.
That's right.
It's too late now.
Over. I have to rely on you for everything now.
But, that's why I tell people your first job out of college, it does matter. Even if you can only do 1% of your paycheck, even if that's all that feels comfortable, do it. Because before you know it, you'll get a raise and that 1% can go to 3%. And it will make a difference, and it'll make a big difference. So I think that's good. I think we covered investing 101 pretty well here. But I'm curious to know, if people have any questions about this, or if you're not investing yet, kind of, why not, I guess, it would be my question. And, if you say you don't have room in your budget, well, did you listen to our budget series? Because you probably have room.
Yeah, and are you using tools to track your finances, right? Free tools to check out where's your money going, what are you spending things on? Because I guarantee if you're not looking at that on a regular basis, people by the end of the year have no idea what they spent their money on, right? Or couldn't tell you what percentage of their money went toward gas versus restaurants or anything like that.
Well, not even by the end of the year, but by the end of the week. I've sat with a lot of people and gone through budgets, and I ask them how much they spend on groceries in a month or in a week, and they don't know. And they're like, oh, I don't make enough money. That's what you always hear is, I don't make enough money. No, most people, not all. Some people truly should focus on increasing their income, but most people should focus on reducing their spending. Mm-hmm. So, but we've already covered that in quite a lot of other podcasts. Obviously, I'm very passionate about these topics, but I think that is a wrap today. So hopefully, we kind of gave you some ammo to start investing, to start looking at different things, and let us know what you think. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Money in the Bank. Make sure to subscribe to us on the iTunes or Stitcher app so that you get weekly alerts every time we post a podcast. Or if you want, you can visit my website, moneyinthebankpodcast.com. And if you want to reach out with any questions or further comments, please email me at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Money in the bank.